Good afternoon, everybody. It is Bobby Rocks here again, coming to you solo, like the last episode, like the episode before that, like every episode essentially since the Festivus for the rest of us episode with Remy. I talked to him, just so everyone's aware, little backstory again. I always like to do backstories when it comes to Remy. So Remy hit me up, and he hit up a former guest of ours that I've talked about a few times. His name's Jason Cox, by the way. And he hit him up and he hit me up and he just asked us if we could help him move some of his belongings to where he currently lives because the lovely Chris, who we used to live with and used to date, is looking to just get rid of the stuff that he left behind. He left it behind for various reasons. I won't go into those reasons. But he asked us if we could reach out and we could schedule a date and a time that we could meet up and just help him move some things. And very quickly, Jason Cox and I were like, sure, why not? And that's what we're going to do this weekend. Remy, in typical Remy fashion, is very likely to offer us very lucrative deals of money, but more likely edibles and any other kind of cannabis products we would be looking to either divulge in or, or something like that. And that's okay. And it's good because it'll be helping him do something that he's been needing to do for a while. And also getting back in touch with him and just hanging out and talking and not making it feel like, oh yeah, we're just doing this because we have a podcast together. And because we're actually friends, and it's about more than that. We're still just in the infancy of game planning some other things that we are going to do. And those things will be coming. But until then, I figured, why the hell make everybody wait that does pay attention to what we do? Why make you guys wait? Why not have something that we can all and be entertained by, or just create something where we can discuss topics related to us? And I figured this has been something that I've wanted to do for a while, especially when I started podcasting, when I started recording, or even game planning to do this thing. Ultimately, one thing I wanted to do, whether it was other podcasters or if it was just people that I know or people I would like to know of similar age to myself, it's about making connections or just seeing what else is out there. And I feel like that's what I want to do with this episode. And what I mean by that is I figured I'd come on here and I would share with you some things on various platforms and various elements of social media that I connect with or follow, and why I follow them, what I've learned, and most importantly, what does it mean for people who consider themselves Xennials?
The Xennial Odyssey Podcast, where we discuss life from the point of view of people born in the late 1970s to the early to mid 1980s. We discuss growing up analog and navigating adulthood in a digital world. Please come join us as we look to uncover what it actually means to be a Xennial.
Now, if you follow this podcast, if you followed it for any amount of time, at some point or another, mostly me, but Remy too, we do operate under the assumption that calling ourselves Xennials is not like, we're not an actual generation. We're not. And to me, it's a tiny bit of a running joke because he's Gen X, I'm a millennial, and these are things I accept. However, the reality is that there's overlap. So I was born in 1982, okay? And my brother is Gen X, my sister is Gen X, our parents are baby boomers, and I was born literally the first or the second year, depending on where you get that information from, of the millennial generation. There's an overlap. And if you asked me, who do I align more with? I align more with Gen X. I'm bitter, I'm resourceful, I was left to fend for myself, I have moments where I'm feral, but to me, beyond just being kind of catchy with the Xennial Odyssey podcast, it's really just about people in this window where you're at the end of Gen X and the beginning of the millennials, because we all have these shared interests and we all have these shared life experiences that maybe people a little older than us, or definitely people a little younger than us, do not have. And that's why, because we oftentimes get just lost in either shuffle. You're either this or you're that. It's black, it's white. There's no gray. And the reality is, yes, there is. And that's the was one of my motivations, and to meet and connect with people in some form or another, and uh, of shared interests and experiences. Now, there was my pie in the sky 2 years ago idea of what that would look like, and it was mostly related to doing this and podcasting. And there's been those type of situations that have occurred, and I'm grateful for that, and I'm looking forward to when they continue. But the reality is, it also, be it AI, be it algorithms, be it what have you, Xennial topics and podcasts and social media platforms became more readily available to me once I started kind of putting things out there. Like when I created the Facebook page, which I neglect by my own admission. I neglect that a lot, and I apologize. Or the Twitter, which I also neglect, and I apologize about that. But some of the things that I've come across, and those are things I want to talk about, are just things that either similar or eye-opening experiences and just overall thoughts that I will have. So I have a Facebook page that I do follow. I have a couple different podcasts, and I will really spend a little time on them, and I'll kind of splice them together. And then I have kind of my thoughts on everything that I've seen, and also some feedback and blowback that I have seen out there about people just using the moniker Xennials. I mean, beyond the fact that everyone's like, how the fuck do you pronounce it? Which I think a lot of people do. So that's where we're going to jump off. And I figured the first thing we can talk about, the one that I'm going to spend the most amount of time on during this podcast episode, is a Facebook group that I follow. And I'll give a little backstory to it. So I was just, scrolling like I usually do through Facebook. And I'm scrolling. And then somebody I am Facebook friends with, but somebody who I went to high school with. And I'll give her a shout out. Rebecca Roderick, thank you for, unbeknownst to you, just sharing something from this group and really catching my eye. And it was something from a group called Xennials. And then in parentheses, it's 1977 to 1983. And that's the name. Xennials, 1977, 1983. And I forget exactly what it was, but it was enough to get my attention and make me log on to their Facebook page. And then from there, I just saw rabbit holes and people posting things that were very, very interesting and related and topical to people our age. And it was enough to make me like and follow the page. And so now elements of that page will show up on my my newsfeed, and I'm forever grateful for that. One thing that they do is they don't add the share button a lot, and I think that's fine. It's really more just because individual people in that group are sharing things and just sharing it and looking for some feedback or just something to there. My first takeaway, by the way, which I am wholeheartedly happy to discuss, is how positive this group is. And to me, what I mean by that is uh, I may have seen something that was negative in this group in the almost year I've been following that group. But that said, most of the time it's several things that people will share. And let me give you some examples because it happens all the time, and I'm happy for it a lot of times. First off, it ties into things that people who consider themselves Xennials talk about. It ties into the fact that we're nostalgic about our childhoods. So a lot of it revolves around that. So a typical post you could have is someone just randomly being like, "Okay, group, I have this movie I saw," and they'll describe the movie and they'll describe it, and sometimes it's so vague that you figure, well, who's going to get that? And what happens is they'll be like, "Hope someone can help," and within 5 minutes, somebody has described it and they'll share a link to the movie, and then the person will look at the link and be like, "Oh my goodness, thank you so much." And then there's books. People will talk about books, and they depending on who you are, you may go, "How the fuck do they people pull shit out of thin air for this?" And that's one element of this group that I absolutely love is that people are like, "I have a core memory. It's a memory from my childhood. I don't remember enough about it, and it drives me batty because maybe it's something I want to share with my children, or it's something I just want to share with other people to see if other people had seen this movie or read this book and have a similar experience to myself." And what they find out is that people did. And I think that's great for connecting. Like that is a great like, wow, I thought this thing was so obscure. And here's somebody in this Facebook group who we know because we can see each other's names, but we're not necessarily friends with. And we can connect on this level. And it leads to conversations in the threads of people going down rabbit holes, and then it leads to people forming more, and it strengthens bonds. And I find that stuff magical. And that's great. Nobody's like swearing at anybody. Nobody's telling anybody something's right or something's wrong because the reality is most people in the group don't give a shit about that. And yes, there are the community guidelines, and they're very strict. There's about 10 guidelines, but even so, like that's not what it's about. One of my other favorite things is that people will share pictures of themselves as children around Christmas time. It's around this is what Christmas was like for us as children. And as you saw through the Festivus episode with Remy, chef's kiss, love you, buddy. Uh, but what you saw between us is that we discussed how Christmas was something different from when we were children as opposed to adults or even teenagers. And a lot of times people are posting pictures like a stereotypical picture is the first Nintendo system we got, or the first PlayStation system we got, or Sega Genesis, or something like that. People posting things of that nature and being like, share your own. And then people will start to share their own. And it just creates, and it's another avenue where people are creating conversations. A lot of music stuff related, and I mean, that's right up my alley. That's music is my wheelhouse. So, people being like, "Hey, does anyone remember this band, or is this band more than a one-hit wonder, like people call them about?" And then people have conversations from there. And again, my biggest takeaway is the positivity that people have, and that says something because we live in an age where social media is stereotypically a fucking cesspool. It's a cesspool of negativity and people just being contrarians and people trolling people and just trying to irate people. And in fact, I watched something with my wife this weekend, a documentary on Netflix called The Antisocial Network. And it was just about various groups, famously Anonymous. Anonymous was one of the groups that were talked about. They talked about 2chan and 4chan and 8chan, which are all kind of related because they started with 2chan. And just they also talked about how it led to just like involvements in the Occupy Wall Street in 2012, and it leads into the Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump election cycle of 2016 and even 2020. And it even talks about other things from there and talks about their influence on that and kind of what goes on with that. And yeah, there are elements there where even when it starts innocent, when you put something out there on that level, you lose control. And that was one takeaway I had is when you put things out there to some degree, you lose an element of control. And this group, because I do research the group every now and then, and this group that I'm involved in, the Xennials 1977 to 1983, has been around for approximately 6 years, and they've stayed away from that for the past 6 years. And I commend the moderators and I commend the group members. By the way, 120 plus thousand members. I'm assuming all over the world. And the fact that you can have a group that is that large, covering probably what I would assume would be this massive area of the internet and of the world, essentially, and you can keep things positive and friendly and really connect with people without the negativity that I just think is so pervasive in online society that it's something to be commended. Now I appreciate that. So the moderators ever saw this because to be fair to them, when I do participate in any kind of Facebook conversations in that group, I don't talk about this podcast because not just because number one, they say don't promote your own shit, which I agree with them. But also because I don't want to be like, oh yeah, I just joined you guys so we can forward my podcast and do other shit. And that's not what the podcast is about. So um yeah, that my big takeaways are just the positivity. And it's somewhere you can go in a social media app where you don't have to get incensed or enraged or deal with people who are clearly just trying to invoke emotional reactions out of people. And that's something that is rare and it's beautiful. And ultimately, what that leads to is it leads to more in depth discussions and conversations in the group, depending on whatever someone posts. And a lot of times where we laugh at how we dressed at proms 25 years ago, or just overall what our fashion was in high school. or what music we listen to as opposed to now, or the ways we're trying to incorporate the good of our childhoods into our children without just forcing it onto them. And then for some people, sadly, realizing that the age gap is a thing between our children and us, and being like they don't see the magic like we did. And that is something that's not unique to us. I get the sense of that when I look back on certain interactions with my parents. Because, for example, what is something a universal thing that really people our age would look back on with certain types of memories that we still involve ourselves in today, as well as if we have children, we do or not, doesn't matter. Disney World, for example. Um, like, for example, my brother went to Disney World recently, and it was as much about him as it was his girlfriend and her children. And he was sharing pictures, not just on Facebook, but in a text group with my sister and him and I, and and it was a lot of stuff related to when we went to Disney when we were children, and how that was for our parents and how they wanted to experience that, but also share those experiences with us. And some of it was like, yeah, this is great, and some of it's like, it's kind of lame. But I think we're at an age where that goes on. And now tying that back in, that is something that comes up in a supportive way in the Xennial group on Facebook, where it's like, yeah, I hear you. My children are the same way. They don't look at the secret of Nim, the same way that we did as children. They're more like, why can't they make this CGI? And then it's like, clutch the pearls. How could you dare say that? Like about an animated movie, which, by the way, one of my favorite movies, regardless of age. Secret of Nim. If you've never seen it, go see it. Came out the year I was born. Dom DeLuise plays a crow, voice of a crow. Wonderful. So yeah, that is the primary way I kind of take in stuff related to Xennials, related to media or online traction. And that's the first one I want to talk about. The next area I'll go to is podcasts. Because one thing that I do every now and then, just want to be like, all right, how many Xennial podcasts are out there? And there are a couple. There are more than a couple, but there are ones that I've seen and I have given quick listens to, and ones that were really short term, some that are still going, some that have been around a long time. And again, that's something else that I've found through my travels, through like Google searches and Spotify and or iHeart Radio or iHeart, or just insert even Apple. And that's that there were podcasts that are out there. Probably one that came to mind is the Xennial Dome. And I did listen a little bit. And again, a lot of the themes that come out of the podcasts that are for Xennials is the nostalgia and growing up in an analog world and then transitioning into the digital world as we became young adults and adults, and the differences between that. But there are a couple that I figured I would kind of single out because of their uniqueness to me, in my opinion, their uniqueness. And the first one is literally, it's just called The Xennial Aviator. That title alone was enough to make me go, you have my attention. All right. And so the backstory on the Xennial Aviator is it's literally a pilot. And he'll talk about being a pilot, but he more just talks about it's like a journaling. It's journaling in a podcast form. And it's just like, oh yeah, I'm talking about, this were experiences with this, but then it goes into his life. And it's just about, today, this is what I did today, or this is what's going on in my life right now, or this is what is going on in the world in general related to aviators right now. And I like that format as well. I mean, sometimes I feel like me personally, especially if I'm alone and I don't have a co-host or I don't have a guest on to have conversations with, that I tend to do that with the podcasts. And I find that it's every now and then it's refreshing to not have a topic because in all honesty, the topics that Remy and I kind of come up with tend to be heavy. We tend to go towards the heavy end of topics for various reasons. It's a lot of it is our backgrounds personally and professionally, but also, I mean, it's just stuff that kind of resonates with us. And I acknowledge that that doesn't resonate with everybody, But it's just I want to cover that avenue sometimes because I feel like it's one that we don't cover enough, and we try not to steer into the world of what's hot right now and relating it to us because to me that on the one hand is clickbait, and I don't really want to create something that's clickbait. So for like the Xennial Aviator, I love the fact that number one, you're talking about being into aviation. It's something that I did when I was very interested in when I was preteen, like 10 to 12 years old. I think back to something that I don't think exists today, that I feel that people our age are the last group of people that experience this, and it's not just DARE, but in my school system in Massachusetts, where I went to middle school, we had DARE after school clubs. So it wasn't just like, "Oh, we're gonna DARE. We're gonna learn about how there's a crackhead on every corner who's waiting to sell you drugs, but we got Crime Dog McGriff here to save us and give us the social skills we need." DARE also sponsored in my hometown. It sponsored just after school specials. Now, on their end, it was probably a way to keep kids from idle hands just does the devil's work type of shit. But there were some cool groups that I got a part of. There were groups like that were just basketball, that was like hockey, and then there was one that was aviation, and that was my favorite. And that's the one that sticks out the most to me because we were instructed by a local police officer who lived in our town who happened to have a pilot's license, and he taught us the basics about aviation science. And then to culminate the class, the last 2 or 3 classes, he would take us to a local airport that just served like Cessnas or small planes, not jets. So even though one of the airports he took us to did serve smaller jets and private jets, and he would fly the plane up into the air, and then he would let us take over flying. And obviously, he's there with his own controllers and with his feet. And I remember that was one of the coolest experiences being 12 years old and literally steering a plane in the air as it is flying. And he would get us up to a cruising altitude, probably, maybe like 2,000 feet tops. And I remember being the airports we were at were about anywhere from 30 to 50 miles from the city of Boston. And us being up to a high enough elevation where you could see Boston from where we were. And then I remember the experience of just being so cool that I could use the rudders, which are the foot pedals, and uh, the joystick or the wheel because it had controller wheels, and actually turning a plane with I'm obviously with assist from an actual pilot, but he let us do a little bit, and he would go to a cruising speed where we weren't going too fast, but we obviously weren't going to stall out, and even though the reality is, were we probably doing a lot? No, and if we did anything that kinda went off kilter, he was there to correct us. It was essentially like the training wheels of of, like, flying a plane, but that's a core memory of mine, and that is something that sticks out to me, and that was the first thing that I thought about when I came across the Xennial Aviator, as I remembered being like, "Oh, that was so cool to actually have the power of being in control of a plane, even if you really weren't," but whatever. Just don't ruin my fantasy, because it was a real thing that happened. And then on top of that, just talking about life and life from someone from the point of view of my age. And that is a great thing to me because it lets me know that there are other people who are in my age group with their own unique takes on life, and that's something that interests me as well. I'm a curious person, and that's something, and I thank them for that, and keep going. Another one that I do have come across is called the Generation in Between, and that one has been around for 6 years, 6-ish years, and that is two ladies. It's like almost like because they're very similar in their approach to Remy and I. They just come at it from the point of view of two ladies, and I think that's also cool. It's like yin and yang, yin and yang. And yeah, it's literally if you read their bio and if you read the kind of the taglines for their podcast, it's literally about growing up in an analog childhood and navigating life in a digital world. And again, from their point of view. And it's similar in that regard to us, but at the same time, it's not. And I like that as well, because to me, that was like, all right, there's people that view using the podcast format similar to the way that I envision using this format. And um, knowing that even though they view it similarly, there's going to be enough of that change that it makes it stand out a little bit. So one thing that I purposely look up there is number one, how many people are talking about Xennials? How many people are podcasting about Xennials? How many people are posting about Xennials? How many people are just Xennials, Xennials, Xennial? And it's like one thing I've noticed, whether the algorithms or the AI is bringing it more to my attention, is that there's more. There's more of us who have taken a stance and an approach that I feel that I have and that I've been looking forward to and saying like, you know what, we don't fit nice and neatly into the millennials or the Gen X, like I talked about at the beginning of the podcast episode. And we feel like there's a lot of people who just project onto us, and that's something that's motivated me in the past, is that a lot of people saying, well, this is the way you should feel. That's how it comes across too. You should feel this way, or you should have had this experience that way. And it's like, well, fuck you. No, I should have the experiences that are mine, and I shouldn't have you try to taint those things. And that's what I get when I think about Generation in Between. And it very, very poignantly captures the feeling that I have. I am literally someone between two generations who doesn't neatly fit into each one, but I have what, in my opinion, would be the positives of both and the negatives, but I don't want to focus on the negatives. And so those are two podcasts that specifically, and I know I mentioned the Xennial Dome, and the Xennial Dome, it wasn't around I don't know if they still do episodes, but it was a podcast that had about maybe like 25, 30 episodes, and they were around, up to like 4 years ago. And you can still find them on most major formats, and that's how I've found them, and listened to a couple of their episodes. And they'll cover things like I think one of them was it wasn't about the X Files, but it was about conspiracy theories, and Remy Denai did an episode about that from a different standpoint, and it was more related to the recent hearings that went on Capitol Hill. But then they talk about things like science fiction and they talk about gaming. And I think that's great because that was something that boomed during our infancy of our, literally or figuratively and literally our infancy, and continued up until the present, and many different formats, be it cinema, be it video games, be it just uh, magazines and comic books and graphic arts and graphic novels. And it's just gone across just the full spectrum of media. And so that's why that's something that interests me, but it's not the be all end. If I have to move on, because I want to get to a place in this episode where it's like, well, okay, Bob, what's your point? What is your angle? What are you talking about? Like, what is the theme of this? Yeah, it's great. You've talked about Xennials 1977, 1983 Facebook group, and you've talked about a couple podcasts and what it has done, kind of triggering your nostalgia or takes you back to core memories. But what is the point? And my point is that in the last 2 years, from February of 2022 to now, I have noticed, for various reasons, some in my control, some outside of my control, I have noticed that there are more of us, and by us, I mean people in my age range. At this point, people who are now in there, and I'll extend it a tiny bit. People who are in their late 30s to their mid 40s, and we all are starting to use social media or podcasts or what have you, WordPress sites or blogs or vlogs or YouTube. We're using the things that are at our fingertips and our disposal to talk about. We have a unique perspective on life. And it's our time to give ourselves our own voice. And to me, that is very important because that is at the core of why I do this. Because I'm tired of people talking for us and telling us where we fit in and how we feel and how we react and how our energies are. And rather, it be people of a similar age and similar experiences to myself saying, no, this is how it was. This is how I feel. And this is my experiences and this is my outlook. And it's us giving ourselves a voice. So that on the first hand, that's something that makes me excited. And I thank everybody that either contributes it in any form to that. Um, and what it does is, especially like the Facebook group is the one that really hits it home when I saw how many people are members of that group. 120,000 people. And that's not the only Xennial group on Facebook. There are other Xennial groups on Facebook. And there's which may or and I haven't looked into those as much, and I know that there's certain things that exist on Twitter or X that are of similar vein. And I really appreciate the fact that there are enough of us going out there, and what we're finding out is, yep, there are people that feel similar to us, and we're connecting. And at least in the standpoint of the Facebook page, it is a overwhelmingly positive experience, especially in a dim, dark world when it comes to Facebook, and that's my opinion. Um, Other things that come to my mind, not just the revelations that there are people who have experienced things to me or things that I thought were unique to me were not so unique. Is just again, maybe it sets off the dopamine or serotonin in my brain, and it makes me just overall feel better. Um, that said, it's not a perfect, it's not perfect, it's not a perfect world, and there is pushback. And my favorite things is that there are blogs or there are people in podcast form, or there are people on YouTube, or there's just people who, if you could do a quick Google search, and you'll find that there are people who are trying to like bust the myth of the Xennial generation. And I think for some of us, and this is a credit to where it's the Gen X part of us, is when I see that stuff, like maybe they're trying to tear us down or make us feel like we're not that special, and try to tell people that you're not this unique snowflake. Is that, well, no shit. It's just our way of kind of differentiating kind of where we fit between these two generations. If you're like me, you don't think it's its own thing. It's a thing that should be recognized. If you're me, you probably don't give a fuck, because I don't. I don't. It's more of a way to just be like, yeah, well, yeah, this group of people in between these two generations, some of them are in this one, some of them are in that one, but we have some overlap that kind of makes us unique and cool, even though we're part of these two generations. And again, if you followed the show enough, you've seen that I've said that the title's a tongue in cheek. It's a tongue in cheek, because if we look at it from a point of view of millennials, what's more millennial than just wanting to separate yourself from them? It's essentially the participation trophy of being a generation in and of itself. And I fully acknowledge that. So it's like, whatever. Okay, so you're not a real generation. Never said we were. Yeah. And then they could sit there with the I think it's Pikachu. The Pikachu meme. Because it's like, oh, you got nothing else. Sorry. Sorry, not sorry. Um, but yeah, other things that I am wholeheartedly looking forward to, because again, I'm of a research mind because of what I went to school for in college and in graduate school. And that's what I like to do. I don't take things on the surface. I like to dig deeper, and things like with the Xennial Facebook group and these podcasts, even the ones I haven't named yet or haven't named at all. And I can always share those on the socials too. But what I love about these is that it gives me a reason to keep looking and keep connecting and keep content going. I could very easily just say, oh, Remy's not here, and he's such a great facilitator, and fuck it. Fuck it. What I described in the last episode aside, because I had to deal with that motor vehicle accident, and it was just a unique situation. But that said, um, I like the fact that I can come on here and I can do these solo things and I can work on these things, and it's a great hobby for me. And I'm just looking to connect, and I'm looking to kind of get things out there and engage with people in different ways. Not looking for fame, not looking for, as people would say, the quote unquote Joe Rogan experience. Like, I'm not looking for that. This is fun. This is fun, and it's my avenue. It's the media that I use to try to get things out there and connect with people and see if people feel similar to me, or just a way for us to experience our lives or share our experiences in a great way. And that is ultimately what this is about. And I like the fact that whether Remy's there or not, because we can do our we can do our episodes that are lighthearted, like Remy and Bobby go to the movies, or we could do things like that. But every now and then, stuff like this is great. And at the end, I always find it very cathartic. It's like, oh, woo, this was good. It's like a therapy session without a therapist. It's like my therapy session for a therapist, they're not never gonna say anything back, at least as far as, whatever. But, yeah, I know another quick hitter episode where I want to come on here and I wanted to just, share these types of things with you all and to, let you know, and I'll put it at the end of the video, especially in the credits, but I will let you know kinda where you can. I have been looking up, they're very secretive about, posting the YouTube page, and but I'll get it. Don't you worry. I'll get the link to the YouTube, can get you links to a couple podcasts that are similar if you want to, so that you can experience those for yourself and just see what those are about too. And until the next time, as always, thank you again for everyone who still listens and follows and likes and shares and gives feedback or critiques, um, because that's what is going to make us better, and that is something that keeps me going as well. Is to try to perfect what we do here. And so, on that note, thank you again, and until the next time, take care. And I'll let everyone know how Remy's doing after I help him move stuff, which, in all honesty, would probably be just us moving and him acting as a foreman. I half kid. But anyway, take care, everybody. Bye.